I'm Clara, 29, sitting in my cozy apartment, scrolling Reddit late at night. A week ago, my parents invited me to a fancy family dinner at their place, all crystal glasses and warm lights. I thought it'd be a chance to feel close to share my world as a graphic designer, my little business growing. But something happened that night, a moment that cracked my heart open. Ever feel like the ones you love don't really see you? Stick with me for this story. Where are you watching from? Like and subscribe to join me. I pulled into my parents' driveway, the crunch of gravel under my tires louder than I remembered. Their house loomed ahead, a suburban mansion with ivy climbing the brick walls glowing under soft porch lights. I adjusted my navy dress in the rearview mirror, smoothing a stray curl. At 29, I wanted to walk in looking like I had it together, like my graphic design business was more than just Clara's little hobby, as my dad once called it. I grabbed my purse, took a deep breath, and stepped out the cool evening air, brushing my skin. The front door was heavy carved oak, and I pushed it open to a wave of chatter and the clink of glasses. My mom, Margaret, was in the foyer, her silver hair swept up, fussing over a bouquet of lilies. "Clara, you made it," she said, her smile warm but fleeting as she glanced at my niece's stroller. "Catherine's here with the baby. Isn't she just perfect?" I nodded, swallowing a twinge of something I couldn't name. "Yeah, she's adorable." I followed Mom into the dining room where a crystal chandelier cast tiny rainbows on the walls. The adult table was set for 8 linen napkins folded like swans, wine glasses catching the light. My brother Benjamin was there laughing with his wife Rachel, while my sister Catherine adjusted her husband's tie. It felt like stepping into a magazine spread, elegant and untouchable. I lingered by the table, tracing a finger along a silver fork, imagining my place among them. I'd prepped for this, rehearsing stories about my latest client, a local cafe that loved my logo design. Maybe tonight they'd ask about my work, see me as more than the youngest, the one who hasn't settled down. My dad, Robert, appeared from the kitchen, his tie loose, a glass of bourbon in hand. "Clara," he said, his voice gruff but kind. "You're at the kids' table tonight, in the kitchen." I froze, my hand still on the fork. "What?" I laughed, thinking it was one of his dry jokes. "Dad, come on." He didn't smile. "It's just space, sweetheart. The adult table's full." My mom chimed in, rearranging a centerpiece. "We had to prioritize, Clara. You understand." The room tilted. My cheeks burned as I glanced at Catherine, who was whispering something to Benjamin. Her lips curved, and I caught the words, "still the baby." Benjamin stifled a chuckle, his eyes flicking to me, then away. Rachel busied herself with her phone, pretending not to hear. I forced a smile, my throat tight. "Sure. Okay." My voice sounded smaller than I meant. I walked toward the kitchen, each step heavier, like wading through water. The kids' table was a folding card table covered with a plastic cloth, surrounded by mismatched chairs. My niece Lily, 10, was already there, coloring on a napkin. "Hey, Aunt Clara," she said, her ponytail bouncing. "Why aren't you with the grown-ups?" Her question hit like a punch. I sat down, the chair creaking under me, and forced another smile. "Just keeping you company, kiddo." But my eyes stung, and I stared at the plastic cup in front of me, the kind you'd give a toddler. From the dining room, laughter spilled over, sharp and bright, like it belonged to a world I wasn't part of. I picked up a crayon Lily had dropped, rolling it between my fingers, its waxy smell sharp in the stuffy kitchen. The kids' table felt like a different universe, with juice stains on the cloth and a wobbly leg that rocked when my nephew Ethan kicked it. Lily was still coloring, humming softly, while Ethan and his cousin bickered over a toy car. I tried to focus on them, to be the fun aunt, but my ears kept pulling toward the dining room, where my family's voices rose and fell like a song I wasn't invited to sing. I leaned back, the chair digging into my spine, and caught a glimpse of the mantel through the doorway. There was a photo from when I was 7, standing alone by a swing set, my pigtails uneven. Catherine and Benjamin were never in those old pictures, always off with friends or sports while I stayed home sketching in the backyard. That photo stared back now like it knew I was still that kid stuck on the sidelines. Lily tugged my sleeve. "Aunt Clara, draw something." She pushed her napkin toward me, her eyes bright. I forced a grin, sketching a quick butterfly, but my hand shook, and the wings came out lopsided. "It's pretty," she said, but I barely heard her. My sister's laugh cut through the air high and sharp, followed by my dad's deep chuckle. They were talking about Catherine's new office, how she was changing the game at her law firm. I waited, hoping someone would mention me, maybe ask about the cafe logo I'd poured weeks into. Nothing came. The kitchen door swung open, and Rachel stepped in her heels, clicking on the tile. She grabbed a pitcher of juice from the counter, her bracelets jangling. "Clara, you're so good with kids," she said, her smile too bright, like she was talking to a nanny. "It's sweet how you keep them entertained." She didn't wait for a reply, just breezed back to the dining room, leaving the door half open. My stomach twisted. Sweet. Like I was some teenager earning pocket money, not a woman running her own business. I pulled out my phone, my fingers clumsy, and texted Elise. They put me at the kids' table, like I'm not even part of the family. I hit send, my chest tight, waiting for her reply to anchor me. Ethan spilled his juice, a sticky puddle spreading across the table. I grabbed a napkin, blotting it up when my mom's voice carried from the dining room. "Clara, can you keep the kids quiet? We're trying to talk." Her tone was light, but it landed like a slap right in front of everyone. Benjamin's wife laughed softly, and I imagined her whispering to Catherine something about how I was still a mess. My phone buzzed. Elise's text. "That's messed up. You're worth more than that table." I read it twice, clinging to her words, but the ache in my chest grew sharper. I looked at Lily, who was now braiding her doll's hair, oblivious to the storm inside me. The dining room chatter swelled again, my dad's voice booming about Benjamin's new house, how it was a real family home. Each word felt like a brick building a wall between me and them. I tucked my phone away, my hands cold. I wanted to walk out to scream, but I stayed glued to the chair, the plastic cup in front of me mocking my silence. The kitchen felt smaller, the walls closing in, and I knew this night was only going to get worse. The kitchen air felt thick, like I was breathing through a straw. I sat rigid at the kids' table, my fingers gripping the edge of the plastic cloth, trying to anchor myself. Lily was still braiding her doll's hair, humming a tune I didn't recognize, while Ethan and his cousin traded Pokemon cards, their voices a dull buzz. I wanted to join their world, to lose myself in their chatter, but the dining room kept pulling me back. The clink of silverware and my family's easy laughter sliced through the wall, each sound a reminder of where I wasn't. I glanced at the kitchen clock, its second hand ticking louder than it should, counting down the minutes I'd been stuck here. 29 years old, running my own business, and I was babysitting at a card table while my siblings were toasted as the golden children. The unfairness of it burned a slow fire in my chest. I tried to distract myself, picking up a paper plate and folding it into a makeshift fan, the kind I used to make as a kid during summer picnics. Back then, I'd sit with Catherine and Benjamin, all of us equal giggling over melted ice cream. Now they were out there, their lives framed in my parents' pride, while I was here, fanning myself with a plate like nothing had changed. The dining room door creaked, and my brother Benjamin stepped in his polished shoes, gleaming under the fluorescent light. He grabbed a bottle of sparkling water from the fridge, his tie loosened, a smirk playing on his lips. "Having fun out here?" "Clara?" He asked, his tone light, but edged with something sharp. I forced a laugh, my throat dry. "Oh, you know, living the dream." I gestured at the kids' table, hoping he'd catch the sarcasm, maybe even apologize. He didn't. "You always were good at playing pretend," he said, leaning against the counter. "Remember when you used to set up those fake art galleries in the garage? Mom thought it was cute." My jaw tightened. cute, like my graphic design career was just an extension of childhood scribbles, not a business I'd built from late nights and empty coffee cups. Yeah, well, some of us turned hobbies into something real. I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Benjamin raised an eyebrow like he was sizing me up, then shrugged. Sure. Just don't let the kids wreck the place. He walked back to the dining room, the door swinging shut behind him, leaving me with the echo of his words. I stared at the table, the juice stains blurring as my eyes burned. Don't let the kids wreck the place. Like I was the hired help, not his sister. I pulled out my phone again, scrolling to Elise's last text, her words a lifeline. You're worth more than that table. I wanted to believe her, but the doubt crept in, heavy and cold. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe this was just how families worked, and I was too sensitive, too stubborn to fit in. Lily looked up her doll now, sporting a lopsided braid. Aunt Clara, you okay? She asked, her voice small but clear. I blinked, forcing a smile. Yeah, just thinking, kiddo. But I wasn't okay. The ticking clock. Benjamin's casual dismissal, the weight of being unseen, it was all piling up, pressing against my ribs. I stood, needing air, and mumbled something about checking on the dessert. I slipped into the hallway, the cool wood floor grounding me for a moment, but the dining room's glow pulled me closer, like a moth to a flame I knew would burn. I hovered in the hallway, my bare feet cold against the hardwood. The dining room's golden light spilling out like a stage I wasn't allowed to step onto. My heart thudded, urging me to go back to the kitchen to stay small, but I couldn't move. I leaned against the wall, close enough to hear my family, but hidden by the shadow of a coat rack. Their voices wove together, a tapestry of pride and celebration, and I wanted so badly to be part of it. My mom's laugh rang out bright and full as she said, "Catherine, that promotion is just the start. You're making us so proud." I pictured her glass, raised her eyes, sparkling with that look she used to give me when I'd bring home a good report card. I waited my breath, shallow, hoping for a shift for someone to say, "What about Clara?" But the conversation rolled on my dad's voice, booming about Benjamin's new house, how it was a legacy for his kids. I pressed my palm against the wall, the plaster cool and rough grounding me as my chest tightened. I'd told them about my latest project, the cafe logo that took weeks of revisions, the client who said my work breathed life into their brand. I'd sent Mom an email about it, even attached a photo of the finished sign. She'd replied with a quick, "Looks nice," and nothing else. Now standing here, that email felt like a plea they'd ignored. The dining room grew quieter, and I heard my sister's husband Mark say, "Clara's still finding her way, right? Not everyone's ready for the big table." His tone was light, almost kind, but it cut deeper than Benjamin's smirk. A few chuckles followed, and Rachel added, "She's great with the kids, though. That's her thing." My nails dug into my palm, the pain sharp, but not enough to drown out the sting. Her thing. Like my life, my work, my dreams could be summed up as babysitting. I wanted to barge in to tell them about the late nights I spent building my business, the clients who trusted me, the art that was mine. But my feet stayed glued, my voice locked in my throat. I slipped back to the kitchen, my steps silent, and sank into my chair. Lily was now stacking sugar packets, her doll forgotten, while Ethan argued with his cousin over who got the last cookie. I stared at the table, the plastic cloth crinkled and stained, and felt a wave of nausea. This was where they saw me, where they'd always see me. Not as Clara, the woman who'd built something from nothing, but as the little sister, the odd one out. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I pulled it out, hoping for Elise's words to pull me back from the edge. But it was a notification from my bank, a reminder of a late payment on my business loan. I'd been so focused on this dinner, on proving I belonged, that I'd let it slip. The irony hit hard. I was killing myself to be seen, and I was still invisible, even to myself. From the dining room, my dad's voice rose again, this time with a story about his own career, how he'd paved the way for Catherine and Benjamin. The words blurred, each one a stone piling onto my chest, until I could barely breathe. I looked at Lily, her innocent stack of sugar packets teetering, and felt a crack inside me, something fragile about to shatter. I sat back at the kids' table, my hands trembling as I pushed a stray sugar packet toward Lily's wobbly tower. The kitchen felt like a cage, the fluorescent light buzzing overhead, casting harsh shadows on the linoleum. Ethan and his cousin were now flicking crumbs at each other, their giggles grating against the storm inside me. I wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor, but the dining room's pull was relentless, its warmth taunting me through the open doorway. My mom's voice broke through, clear and commanding. "Everyone, let's have a special toast." I straightened, my heart lurching with a flicker of hope. Maybe this was it, the moment they'd see me. I edged toward the doorway, leaning against the frame, my navy dress catching on the rough wood. The adult table was a picture of elegance, candlelight dancing on their faces, glasses raised high. Catherine beamed, her diamond earrings glinting, while Benjamin leaned back, arm around Rachel. My dad stood, his bourbon glass steady, his smile wide. "To our family," he said, his voice thick with pride. "To Catherine for her incredible promotion, and Benjamin for building a home that'll carry our name forward. We're so proud." I waited. My breath caught, expecting my name next. I'd told Dad about my cafe project, how the owner cried when she saw the sign. I'd thought he'd listened, thought he'd seen me, but his eyes swept over Catherine and Benjamin, lingering on their spouses, and then he sat down, the toast complete. My mom clapped, her laughter bright, and the table erupted in cheers, glasses clinking like a symphony I wasn't part of. My knees buckled, and I gripped the doorframe, the wood biting into my palm. They hadn't just forgotten me. They'd erased me. 29 years old, my business growing, my life mine, and I was nothing to them. The room spun, the chandelier's rainbows blurring into a haze. I wanted to scream, to demand they look at me, but my voice was gone, swallowed by the weight of their indifference. Catherine's voice cut through, sharp and playful. "Clara's having a blast at the kids' table, right?" She turned, catching my eye from across the room. Her smile teasing, but not cruel. A few laughs followed, Mark's the loudest, and Rachel nodded, sipping her wine. "It's like old times," Catherine added, and the table chuckled again, as if I was a nostalgic prop, not a person standing right there. My face burned, the heat spreading down my neck. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Lily tugged my sleeve, whispering, "Aunt Clara, you're squeezing my hand." I hadn't realized I was holding it, my grip too tight, and I let go, mumbling an apology. The dining room's laughter faded, replaced by the hum of their conversation moving on without me. I backed into the kitchen, my chest heaving, and sank into a chair. The sugar packets had toppled, scattered like my thoughts. I stared at the plastic tablecloth, its faded flowers mocking me, and felt something crack inside, a dam about to burst. I needed out, needed air, but the weight of their dismissal pinned me down heavier than ever. My hands shook as I clutched the edge of the kids' table, the plastic cloth crumpling under my fingers. The kitchen's buzz felt distant, like I was underwater, drowning in the echo of my family's laughter. I wanted to run, to shatter the silence with a scream, but my body wouldn't move. Ethan's cookie crumbs littered the floor, and Lily's quiet humming was the only tether keeping me from unraveling completely. The dining room door swung open, and my mom stepped in, balancing a tray of desserts, her floral perfume sharp in the stale air. "Clara, can you help with these?" she asked, her tone brisk, like I was staff, not her daughter. I nodded, numb, and stood to take the tray, my legs unsteady. As I followed her back to the dining room, I caught my reflection in a hallway mirror, my eyes red, my navy dress wrinkled. I looked like a stranger, someone who didn't belong. I set the tray on the adult table, careful not to meet anyone's gaze. The desserts were perfect, tiny cheesecakes with glossy berries, the kind Mom spent hours on for special nights. I lingered, hoping for a glance, a word, anything to pull me into their circle. But my dad was deep in a story about his old firm, and Catherine was showing Rachel her new watch, their voices overlapping in a hum of contentment. Then Ethan burst in from the kitchen, his sneakers squeaking, a juice stain on his shirt. "Aunt Clara's not playing with us," he announced, tugging at my mom's sleeve. The table went quiet, all eyes on me, and my stomach dropped. My mom sighed, her lips pursed. "Clara, can't you keep them under control? We're trying to have a moment here." Her words landed like a slap sharp in public. Benjamin smirked, leaning back in his chair, while Catherine raised an eyebrow. Her fork paused mid-air. Rachel whispered something to Mark, her hand covering a smile. I stood frozen, the tray still in my hands, the weight of their stares crushing me. My mom didn't even look sorry, just waved Ethan back to the kitchen as if I was the problem, not her words. I set the tray down, my fingers clumsy, and a cheesecake slid off, splattering on the tablecloth. The room gasped, a small collective sound that felt like a spotlight. "Clara!" My mom snapped, her voice low but cutting. "Be careful. This isn't your art studio." The table laughed a soft, pitying chuckle, and my dad shook his head like I was a child who'd spilled milk. I backed away, my throat burning, and stumbled toward the porch door. The cool night air hit my face as I stepped outside, the wooden boards creaking under my feet. I sank onto the steps, my breath ragged tears spilling over before I could stop them. The stars blurred above, and I hugged my knees, my heart a hollow ache. They didn't just overlook me. They'd made me nothing, a shadow in their perfect family, and I didn't know how to exist in that anymore. The porch steps dug into my thighs, the night air sharp against my tear-streaked face. I sat there, curled tight, the sting of my mom's words still ringing her voice, slicing through the dining room's laughter. I was nothing to them, a ghost at their perfect table, and the weight of that truth pressed me into the wood, heavy and unyielding. But as the crickets chirped, a small spark flickered inside me, faint but stubborn. I couldn't stay here shrinking to fit their version of me. I wiped my eyes, my fingers smudging mascara, and stood the boards creaking under my weight. The house glowed behind me, its windows warm, but it felt like a stranger's home. I slipped back inside, moving quietly through the hallway, past the mirror that had shown me a broken reflection. The kitchen was empty now, the kids' table littered with cookie crumbs and juice cups, Lily and Ethan gone to play elsewhere. I grabbed my purse from the counter, my hands steadier than I expected. My phone buzzed a text from Elise. "You okay? Need me?" I stared at it, her words a lifeline, but I didn't reply yet. I needed to do this first to move before the ache swallowed me whole. I pulled a napkin from the table, one of Lily's doodles still on it, and found a pen in my bag. My hand shook as I wrote, "Had to leave early." "Thanks for the invite." I set it beside the juice pitcher, the words simple but final, a line drawn in the sand. The dining room hummed with chatter, my dad's voice carrying a story about his golf game, Catherine's laugh punctuating it. I paused at the doorway, my heart pounding, half expecting someone to notice me to call me back. But their heads were bent over dessert plates, their world complete without me. I turned away, my flat silent on the hardwood, and walked to the front door. The oak was heavier than before, but I pushed it open, stepping into the cool night. My car was parked crooked, the gravel crunching as I approached. I slid into the driver's seat, the leather cold against my legs, and shut the door with a soft thud. For a moment, I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, the silence loud in my ears. I wasn't running, I told myself. I was choosing to leave, to stop begging for a seat that was never mine. The engine purred to life, and I pulled out the mansion shrinking in my rearview mirror, its lights fading like a dream I didn't need anymore. I drove toward Elise's place, the streets quiet, lined with old oaks and flickering street lamps. My chest felt lighter, the spark inside growing, but my hands still trembled, doubt whispering that I'd regret this. What if I'd overreacted? What if this broke us for good? I pushed the thoughts down, focusing on the road, the hum of the tires grounding me. I was done being invisible. Whatever came next, I'd face it on my terms. The city lights blurred past my windshield, each one a pinprick against the dark, guiding me to Elise's apartment. My hands were steady now, the wheels smooth under my palms, but my heart still raced a mix of fear and something new, resolve maybe. I turned onto her street, the familiar row of brick buildings calming me, their windows glowing with late-night life. I parked the engine ticking as it cooled and sat for a moment, letting the quiet settle over me like a blanket. Elise's buzzer was sticky, always had been, and I pressed it twice before her voice crackled through. "Clara, get up here!" Her tone was warm, urgent, and I climbed the narrow stairs, my flats scuffing the worn carpet. She opened the door before I knocked her hair in a messy bun, her sweatshirt sleeves rolled up. "You look like hell," she said, pulling me into a hug that smelled of lavender and coffee. I sank onto her couch, the cushions soft, littered with throw pillows she'd collected from thrift shops. The room was small, cluttered with books and half-finished paintings, but it felt safe, like a place where I could breathe. Elise handed me a mug of tea, the steam curling up, and sat cross-legged on the floor. "Spill!" she said, her eyes locked on mine. I told her everything, not just the kids' table, but the toast that skipped me. My mom's sharp words, the laughter that felt like a blade. My voice cracked as I described the cheesecake splattering the way they'd looked at me like I was a clumsy kid. Elise listened, her face shifting from anger to something softer, her hand resting on my knee. "They don't get to decide your worth," she said. "You're not their prop." Her words hit deep, stirring the spark I'd felt on the porch. I sipped the tea chamomile, its warmth spreading through me. I left a note. I said, almost surprised at myself. I just walked out. No scene, no fight. Just gone. Elise grinned, a fierce kind of pride in her eyes. "That's power, Clara. You didn't beg. You chose you." She leaned forward, her voice low. "But you can't keep going back to places that shrink you. Promise me you'll start saying no." I nodded, the idea settling like a seed. No more dinners where I was an afterthought, no more chasing their approval. I pulled out my phone, ignoring the notifications piling up, missed calls, texts probably from my mom or Catherine. Instead, I opened Reddit, my fingers moving before I could overthink it. I started a thread, anonymous, my words raw. My family put me at the kids' table at a fancy dinner. I'm 29, successful single. I left quietly. Am I wrong to feel this hurt? I hit post, my pulse quickening, and set the phone down. It wasn't about answers, not really. It was about claiming my story, letting it exist outside their narrative. Elise watched me, her smile soft now, and refilled my mug. "You're gonna be okay," she said. And for the first time that night, I believed it. I leaned back, the couch creaking, and looked at her, my best friend, my anchor. The ache was still there, a bruise I'd carry, but it didn't own me anymore. I set the mug on the coffee table, my hands still, and met her gaze. In that quiet moment, I felt the shift, a strength I hadn't known I had, rising like a tide I wouldn't stop. I woke on Elise's couch, the morning light slanting through her blinds, painting stripes across my lap. My neck ached from the lumpy pillow, and my navy dress was creased, a relic of last night's escape. The apartment was quiet, Elise still asleep, her cat curled at my feet. I reached for my phone, the screen a mess of notifications, 23 missed calls, a string of texts, voicemails piling up like debts. My family had noticed I was gone, and the weight of their reactions settled over me, heavy but strangely distant. I swiped through the texts first. Moms were frantic. "Clara, where are you? Call me now." Benjamin's cut deeper. "You just left real mature." Catherine sent one clipped. "We're worried, but you embarrassed us." I stared at the words, my thumb hovering the urge to reply, battling a newer instinct to stay silent. They weren't apologizing. Not really. They were scrambling, caught off guard, and that shift felt like a small, sharp victory. The voicemails were next. Mom's voice, tight with panic, filled the room as I played the first one. "Clara, it's your mother. You can't just walk out like that. We were worried sick. Call me." The second was softer, almost pleading. "Please, honey, let's talk. This isn't like you." I stopped there, my chest tight, her words tugging at old strings of guilt. But I didn't call back. Not yet. I opened Reddit instead, my post from last night, staring back now with dozens of replies. Strangers had poured in their words, raw and real. "You're not wrong. They don't get to diminish you." One comment stuck simple but heavy. "You're enough." I read it again, my eyes stinging, and felt a crack in the wall I'd built to survive that dinner. These people, faceless and far, saw me in a way my family hadn't. Elise shuffled out, rubbing her eyes, and plopped beside me with a mug of coffee. "They're freaking out, huh?" she said, nodding at my phone. I showed her the texts, the voicemails, the Reddit thread. She snorted at Benjamin's message, but her face softened at Mom's. "They're rattled because you didn't play their game," she said. "That's power, Clara. Hold on to it." I nodded, but the spark from last night felt fragile now, tested by their voices, their demands. I stood needing to move and paced to her window, the city waking below, delivery trucks rumbling past. My reflection in the glass was faint, but I saw myself differently. Someone who'd walked away, who'd chosen silence over pleading. Yet the guilt lingered a shadow, asking if I'd broken something that couldn't be fixed. My phone buzzed again, a new text from my dad. "Come home. We need to talk." No warmth, just an order like I was a kid who'd snuck out past curfew. I set the phone down, my hands cold, and looked at Elise, her steady gaze anchoring me. The world was shifting my family's panic, a mirror of my own past desperation, but I wasn't ready to answer. Not when their words still felt like walls closing in, waiting for me to shrink again. I left Elise's apartment around noon, the city's hum a dull backdrop as I drove back to my place. My phone stayed silent now, no new texts or calls, just the weight of the ones I'd ignored. My apartment greeted me with its familiar clutter, sketchpads on the coffee table, a half-dead fern by the window. I dropped my purse and sank onto the couch, the quiet louder than I expected, like the world was holding its breath. I checked Reddit again, the thread still growing. A new comment stood out. "My sister did this too. You leaving was brave." It hit me hard, that word brave. I'd never thought of my quiet exit as courage, but it felt true, a small fire in my chest. I wanted to reply to thank them, but a knock at my door stopped me cold. My heart sank. I knew that sharp, insistent rap. Catherine stood in the hallway, her coat buttoned tight, her face a mix of worry and irritation. "Clara." What the hell, she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invite. "You just left Mom's a mess. Dad's pissed, and Benjamin thinks you're throwing a tantrum." I stayed by the door, my arms crossed, my voice low. "I wasn't welcome, Catherine. You saw it." She sighed, tossing her scarf onto my couch like she owned the place. "You're taking it too personally. The kids' table was just logistics. You didn't have to make a scene by sneaking out." Her words stung, twisting my choice into something petty. "I didn't make a scene," I said, my tone colder than I meant. "I left because I deserve better than being your babysitter." Catherine's eyes narrowed, but she didn't argue. She paced to my window, staring out at the street, her fingers twisting her watch. "You hurt Mom," she said finally, her voice softer but sharp. "She thinks you hate us." I wanted to laugh, to scream that they'd hurt me first, but I just stood there, my nails digging into my palms. "I don't hate you," I said, each word heavy. "I just can't keep pretending I'm invisible." She turned her gaze, meeting mine, and for a moment I saw something flicker, guilt maybe, or recognition. But then her phone buzzed, and she glanced at it, breaking the moment. "We're having brunch tomorrow," she said, pulling her scarf back on. "Come or don't, but don't expect us to chase you forever." She left the door clicking shut, and I stood, frozen, her words echoing. Chase you forever. Like I was the one who'd built the walls. I sank to the floor, my back against the door, and stared at the fern, its wilted leaves curling in defeat. The fire from Reddit, from Elise's pride, flickered but didn't catch. All I felt was the ache of their blame settling like dust, and the sinking truth that my choice to leave hadn't changed them. It had only left me more alone. A week after the dinner, I woke to sunlight filtering through my bedroom curtains, the kind of soft glow that made my apartment feel like a sanctuary. At 29, I'd built this space: wooden bookshelves, a mismatched rug, a desk cluttered with pencils and client notes. Today, it felt like enough. I stretched my bare feet, brushing the cool floor, and padded to the kitchen, the scent of coffee grounds pulling me forward. Catherine's visit still lingered, her words sharp in my memory, but they didn't cut as deep anymore. I poured a mug, the steam curling, and sat at my desk, opening my laptop. A new email waited, a client raving about my latest design, a mural for a bookstore. "It's alive," they wrote, and I smiled, the praise settling like a warm stone in my chest. I'd been so focused on my family's approval, I'd almost forgotten how it felt to be seen for my work. My heart poured into every line. I turned to my sketch pad, flipping to a blank page, and started drawing, not for a client, but for me. The pencil scratched softly, shaping a tree with sprawling branches, roots deep in the earth. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine, a quiet act of reclaiming. I thought about the girl I'd been always chasing, my parents' nods, my siblings' glances. That girl was still in me, but she wasn't driving anymore. My phone sat silent. No new texts from Mom or Dad. No follow-up from Catherine's brunch invite. I'd declined it, a short message. Not this time. Maybe soon. It felt like closing a door, not slamming it, just letting it rest. The silence from them was heavy, but it gave me room to breathe, to hear my own thoughts. I wondered if they were talking about me dissecting my absence, or if they'd moved on, their world spinning without my orbit. I stood, stretching, and walked to my balcony, the city humming below. The air was crisp, carrying the faint smell of rain. I'd bought a small pot of basil last week, a whim at the farmer's market, and I touched its leaves, their texture soft and alive. I watered it, the soil darkening, and felt a small pride in nurturing something new. It wasn't much, but it was a start, a promise to tend to myself the way I'd always tended to others. My thoughts drifted to Lily, her bright eyes, and endless questions. I wanted to see her not at a family event with its unspoken rules, but somewhere free where I could be the aunt she deserved. I grabbed my phone and texted Catherine, "Can I take Lily to the park this weekend? Just us." The message sent, and I set the phone down. My hands steady. I wasn't reaching for their approval anymore. I was building something else, something true. Catherine texted back within the hour, her reply short but open. Sure, Lily would love that. Saturday at noon, I confirmed, a small relief settling in, like finding a smooth stone in a riverbed. I set my phone down and walked to the coffee shop down the street, the bell above the door jingling as I stepped inside. The air smelled of roasted beans and fresh bread, a comfort that wrapped around me. I ordered a latte, the barista's smile easy, and found a corner table by the window. I sipped slowly, watching people pass outside, couples with strollers, a man with a dog, an old woman carrying a canvas tote. Life moved on steady and unconcerned, and I felt part of it, not separate. I pulled out a small notebook, one I'd bought years ago, but rarely used, its pages still crisp. I started writing not a design brief or a to-do list, but thoughts, fragments of who I was now. I am enough. I wrote the words shaky but true. My mind wandered to a memory not of the dinner or my siblings, but of a quiet afternoon when I was 12. Dad had taken me fishing at a lake, just us, the water still and silver. He'd praised my cast, his voice rare and warm, and I'd felt seen whole. That moment was real, but it wasn't my anchor anymore. I didn't need his pride or Mom's to stand tall. I'd built my own ground, my work, my small basil plant, my plans with Lily. A woman at the next table laughed, her voice pulling me back. She was talking to a friend, their hands animated, coffee cups forgotten. I envied their ease, but I didn't feel small. I thought of Diane, a co-worker who'd shared her own story last week about her dad dismissing her career until she stopped asking for his approval. "You just keep going," she'd said, and I was one step at a time. I finished my latte, the foam clinging to the cup, and tucked the notebook away. The street outside was quieter now, the afternoon light softening. I thought of Lily again, how I'd bring her a sketch pad, show her how to shade a leaf, make her laugh. That was family too, not the one I'd fought to fit into, but the one I could choose piece by piece. I stood, leaving a tip on the table, and walked out, the bell jingling behind me. The air was cooler, the city settling into evening. I didn't check my phone, didn't wonder if Mom had called. I just walked, my steps light, my breath even carrying a stillness I hadn't known I could hold. It wasn't peace, not fully, but it was mine, a quiet space where I could grow. Two weeks after the dinner, I stood in my apartment, the morning light spilling across my hardwood floor, catching the edges of a new canvas on my easel. I'm Clara, 29, and for the first time in a while, I felt like I was building something, not proving it. My phone buzzed with a voicemail from Mom, her voice softer than before, asking to meet. I let it sit, not out of anger, but because I needed space to grow into this version of me, the one who didn't run to fix things. I'd started a new routine, small, but mine. Each morning, I'd brew tea, not coffee, the ritual slower, letting me savor the quiet. I'd sit by my balcony, the basil plant, now joined by a tiny mint sprout, their green tips pushing through the soil. I'd sketch their loose lines of city rooftops, or stray cats, not for clients, but for the joy of it, the pencil scratch, a song I'd forgotten I loved. Saturday had been bright, the park alive with kids and kites when I met Lily. I brought her a sketch pad, its cover bright blue, and we sat on a bench drawing clouds that looked like whales. She giggled, her pencil smudging, and asked why I didn't come to brunch. I told her I was figuring things out, and she nodded like she understood more than her 10 years should. That hour with her, free of expectations, felt like family in a way the dinner never had. Work was steadier now. I'd landed another client, a small bakery needing a menu design, and their trust in me felt like a mirror reflecting a Clara I was starting to recognize. I'd stopped checking Reddit as much, the strangers' words a boost, but no longer a lifeline. I was enough without them, without my family's applause, and that truth was settling like roots, finding their way into earth. I walked to my easel, picking up a brush, the paint's sharp scent waking me. I dipped it in ochre, stroking a line across the canvas, bold and unapologetic. It wasn't a masterpiece, just a start, but it was mine. I thought about Mom's voicemail, the cafe she'd suggested, and felt a quiet readiness to face her, not to win, but to be seen as I was. The hurt hadn't vanished, but it was lighter, a shadow I could carry without breaking. I set the brush down my hands, flecked with paint, and stepped back, the canvas glowing in the sunlight. My apartment hummed with small sounds, the fridge's low buzz, a neighbor's radio. I breathed deep, the air clean, and felt the world steady around me, a place where I could stand whole and quiet, ready for whatever came next. The cafe was tucked on a quiet street, its windows fogged with warmth against the late afternoon chill. I arrived early, my scarf loose around my neck, and chose a corner table, the wood worn smooth by years of hands. Mom and Dad were due any minute, Catherine too, and I sipped my black coffee, its bitterness grounding me. I wasn't here to fight or to beg for their understanding. I was here to speak my truth, to stand in it, whether they saw me or not. They arrived together. Mom's coat dusted with rain. Dad's face guarded Catherine, trailing with a hesitant smile. We ordered drinks, the clatter of cups filling the awkward silence. Mom spoke first, her voice careful. "Clara, we didn't mean to hurt you at the dinner. It was just a seating thing." Her eyes searched mine, wanting absolution, but I held her gaze steady. "I know you didn't mean it." I said my words slow, deliberate, but it wasn't just the table. It was feeling like I don't belong in your story, like my life doesn't count because it's different. My voice stayed even, but each word carried the weight of years of being the youngest, the one left out. Dad shifted his coffee untouched. "We're proud of you, Clara. We just don't always know how to show it." His admission was small, but it landed a crack in his usual stoicism. Catherine nodded, her fingers twisting a napkin. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice catching. "I didn't realize how it looked. I've been so caught up in my own stuff." I listened, letting their words settle, but I didn't rush to smooth things over. "I need you to see me as I am," I said. "Not as the kid's sister, not as a placeholder. I'm building something real, and I deserve a seat, not a favor." They didn't argue, didn't defend. Mom's eyes glistened, and Dad reached for her hand, a gesture I hadn't seen in years. We talked longer, not fixing everything, but laying bricks for something new. They didn't fully get it, not yet, but they heard me, and that was enough for now. I left the cafe lighter, the rain outside, a soft patter, my steps steady on the wet pavement. Back home, I opened my laptop and updated my Reddit thread, thanking the strangers who'd held space for my pain. I didn't need their voices anymore, but I'd never forget their kindness. The lesson came quietly, like dusk settling over a long day. Family isn't just blood or shared tables. It's the people who make room for your truth, who see your worth even when you doubt it. But the first step is seeing it yourself, choosing to stand in your own light, even when it's dim. I'd spent years chasing their pride, but freedom came when I stopped running, when I built my own table, one where I belonged. What's the moment you knew you were enough? Share it below. I'd love to hear your story. If this journey resonated, please like, subscribe, or share it with someone who needs it. Thank you for listening, for being here. Here's to finding our place, one quiet step at a time.